Hey guys, tonight we're climbing down into the mud, literally. You're waking up in a British trench somewhere along the Western Front, and trust me, you probably won't survive this if it were real. But since this is our sleepy little journey through history, you get the cozy version. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It's just before dawn when the whistle cuts through your half-dream. The sound is thin, desperate, and shrill, somewhere between a bird call and a dentist drill, and it means one thing: stand to. You blink against the grey that leaks over the trench, and your world is still a stew of mud and shadow. Your blanket is wet. The sandbags above you drip with last night's rain. Somewhere, a rat squeaks, unimpressed by your human suffering. You haul yourself upright, boots squelching in something you're not sure is water. It's cold enough to sting, but you've stopped feeling most of your fingers weeks ago. The sergeant's voice echoes down the line. Everyone up. Rifles ready. You join the chorus of scraping metal as men check bolts and wipe mud off gun barrels. Someone coughs, a deep rattle that probably means trench fever, and the man next to you mutters that he'll be fine by Christmas. He won't. The trench smells of clay, sweat, and that faint metallic tang that clings to everything here. Blood, rust, maybe both. Overhead, the sky is dull pewter, heavy with the promise of another long, wet day. You peer over the parapet just enough to glimpse no man's land. A broken graveyard of wire, shell holes, and frost. The French line sits somewhere out there, silent for now, but silence means nothing in this place. You shift your weight, feeling the wooden duckboards flex beneath your boots. They creak like old bones. You remember the last time someone slipped and fell into the sump water. It took 3 men to drag him out, and he still smelled like rot for days. You learn to step carefully after that. A private 2 spots down is trying to light a cigarette, shielding the match with his palm. The flare of orange briefly paints everyone's faces, young, dirty, eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights. He offers you a drag, and you take it, the smoke cutting through the damp. "Morning luxury," he says with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. There's an odd peace in this moment between the whistle and the first gunfire. You can hear birds, impossibly. Blackbirds, maybe. They sing like the world beyond the trenches still exists, somewhere untouched. You close your eyes for a second and almost imagine home, but the sergeant yells again, snapping you back. "Stand to!" Everyone freezes, rifles up, peering through the mist. You watch the line ahead, heart thudding with each second. Sometimes the Germans charge at dawn, sometimes they don't. You can never tell. The wait is the hardest part. It stretches time like taffy, turns minutes into small eternities. A historical fact here: in 1916, both sides followed the same ritual. Every dawn, soldiers stood to arms in case of an attack, because statistically, dawn and dusk were prime times for raids. It's a strange routine, equal parts superstition and survival. You hate it, but you trust it too. A shell whistles somewhere far off, the sound rising and fading like thunder moving away. You flinch instinctively, but it lands miles off. The man next to you mutters a quick prayer, half habit, half insurance. You used to laugh at him for that, but not anymore. Then there's the quirky bit. One of the newer recruits swears he saw a dog wearing a helmet last night, wandering between trenches, the rumours spreading fast. Some say it's a German messenger dog gone rogue, others claim it's haunted. You decide it's probably just a very confused animal trying to survive, same as everyone else. Still, it gives you something to talk about while pretending you're not terrified. The scholarly debate part. Historians still argue how average any soldier's day truly was. Depending on whether you were British, French, German, or colonial, your experience of the trenches varied wildly. Some sectors were relatively quiet, others constant hell. What's average when every breath could be your last? It's a question academics chew on, but you already know the answer. Average means alive, at least for now. The light strengthens, seeping into every puddle and corner. The order comes down, stand down. A collective exhale ripples through the men. You lower your rifle, shoulders aching, neck stiff. The sky's now fully awake, painted a dull white. and you wonder how many more mornings like this you can take. Someone starts humming, off-key but comforting. It's a tune from before the war, something about sunshine and girls in summer dresses. You can't remember the words anymore. You hum along anyway, because silence feels heavier. The day begins as all others do, with the realization that you've survived another night, and that surviving again might be the hardest part. You stretch, shake the mud off your coat and think about breakfast, if the term still means anything. You've got iron rations somewhere in your pack, a tin of something that used to resemble meat. The thought is both disgusting and strangely reassuring. Above you, the larks are singing louder now. The rats retreat deeper into the burrows. The sun tries to climb over the ridge, fighting its way through the smoke and chill. Another day in the trenches, another circle of exhaustion and endurance. You take one more deep breath, trying to ignore the stench of rot and cordite. For a fleeting second, you imagine what it would be like to feel clean air again, to stretch out in a real bed, to sleep without the earth trembling. Then the sergeant's voice calls out again, something about rations, and you shove that thought away. You shoulder your rifle and step forward, ready to face the next small eternity this war calls a day. Breakfast in the trenches is a generous word for what follows. You reach into your haversack, fingers numb, and pull out what's left of your rations. A slab of hardtack biscuit, a tin of bully beef, and a lukewarm splash of tea that's been sloshing in your mug since yesterday. You tap the biscuit against the wooden duckboard. It makes a noise like knocking on a coffin lid. You half laugh. If it cracks, I win, you mumble. It doesn't crack. A few men cluster near a brazier, a dented metal bin where someone's managed to coax a small fire from damp scraps of wood and a dash of paraffin. The smell of smoke briefly masks the trench stench, and you hover closer. Someone has managed to warm their tin of beef until it's soft enough to spread on bread that looks more like concrete. You hand over your cup for a refill of what the lads call trench coffee. It's mostly brown water with a whisper of tea leaf and iron filings from the kettle rim. You sip anyway. The warmth hits your throat, and for a few seconds, you could almost pretend you're home, sitting by a fireplace instead of a crater. You chew the biscuit, feeling the grit grind between your teeth. "You know," says Private Jones, "these things could stop a bullet." He grins, revealing a missing tooth, courtesy of yesterday's attempt to bite through another ration. You joke that if you die, they should just stack your biscuits as a headstone. Everyone laughs too loudly, the kind of laughter that only half hides exhaustion. A historical fact slides in here. Each British soldier was allotted about 4,000 calories a day, though few ever got close to that in practice. Supply lines were inconsistent, and by the time food reached the front it was often mouldy or crawling. Men swapped, traded, or outright stole for something fresh. Jam became a luxury currency, especially plum and apple. You'd sell your last cigarette for a tin of it. A shell booms somewhere in the distance, low and lazy, like thunder muttering behind hills. No one flinches. You've all learned the difference between near and not my problem. The real worry is when the sound gets sharper, closer, then you dive. But for now, you eat. The trench rats are awake now, emboldened by breakfast. One scampers across the duckboard and snatches a crumb from your boot. You don't even bother to kick it. Some men shoot them for sport, others keep them as pets, strange as it sounds. There's a rumour that one rat was trained to fetch cigarette butts, though no one's sure if that's true or just trench legend. Then there's a new recruit, barely out of his teens, trying to open his tin with a knife too dull for the job. He mutters a curse as he slices his thumb. You hand him a strip of cloth, part of a bandage you've been reusing for weeks. Blood doesn't bother you much anymore. It's part of the morning routine, like brushing your teeth used to be. Speaking of brushing teeth, you remember the official hygiene instructions. Brush once a day, if possible. It's rarely possible. Some men rub charcoal on their gums just to feel cleaner. You, meanwhile, use a bit of hard biscuit dust pretending it works. Your mouth tastes like rust and regret, but at least it's consistent. Here's a quirky fact. Some soldiers swore that eating the trench biscuits softened if you soaked them in rum, or even dipped them into soup for hours. Others found them more useful as building material. Archaeologists have unearthed bunkers reinforced with old rations like edible bricks. You believe it? You could probably fortify half of Flanders with what's in your kit bag. As you sit, the fog begins to lift slightly. The landscape emerges, a rippling wasteland of churned earth, smashed trees, and half-buried wire. The horizon hums faintly with artillery, the constant reminder that the front never sleeps. You notice a dead tree still standing, its bark stripped, its silhouette like a skeleton waving to the sky. You can't decide if it's tragic or heroic. Private Jones nudges you. "Heard they're sending up some eggs tomorrow," he says. "Real eggs." You smirk. "And unicorn steak for supper." "Laugh it up," he replies. "But I heard from a runner, straight from headquarters." You both know he's lying, but it's the sort of lie that tastes better than truth. You finish your tea, now cold, and set the tin aside. Someone starts singing softly, a bit of an old music hall tune. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag. A few others join in, their voices rough but steady. For a few lines, the trench almost feels like a chorus of stubborn hearts, instead of a grave with plumbing. The scholarly debate. Some historians argue that these moments of normalcy, breakfasts, songs, jokes, were essential psychological armour. Others say it's over-romanticised, that most soldiers were too numb to care. You lean toward the first theory. You've seen men cling to a scrap of humour like a life raft, and sometimes it worked. Sometimes laughter was the only thing louder than the guns. A shout echoes down the trench. Mail call later today, maybe. Spirits lift. Even a postcard can feel like sunlight here. For now, though, you're told to clean your rifle. You groan but comply, pulling the bolt free, wiping the grime with your sleeve. The smell of oil and dirt fills the air, oddly comforting in its routine. As you work, you think about how every sound, the click of metal, the murmur of conversation, even the wind across the wire, has become part of your heartbeat. You live by rhythms now, not hours. Whistles, shells, rations, stand to. It's a mechanical life that somehow keeps beating. Breakfast ends as abruptly as it began. The brazier goes out, and the smoke fades into the mist. The sergeant strides past, checking rifles, nodding curtly. The day will move on to shovels, drills, and the endless war against mud itself. You sigh, tuck your biscuit tin back into your bag and stretch your aching legs. One last sip of tea, cold, metallic, perfect in its own miserable way. You swallow and wipe your mouth with your sleeve. Another day has started. The sky grows brighter, the light harsh now. Somewhere, a lark dares to sing again. You smile, small and tired. Even here, life finds a way to hum along. You know it's going to be one of those mornings when the mirror is a tin cup of muddy water, and your razor could double as a farming tool. But ritual is ritual. The sergeant insists that discipline keeps men alive, which apparently includes scraping your face clean even if shells are falling 3 miles away. So, you crouch near a puddle, technically a shell hole, filled with the kind of water that looks like it remembers dead frogs. You scoop a bit into your cup, dip your dull razor blade in it, and sigh. Your reflection blurs in the ripples, a ghost of someone who used to have a jawline and optimism. You run a hand over the stubble, now thick enough to count as insulation. Better than frostbite, you mutter. Still, you start shaving. The blade snags. Your skin protests. The cold makes it feel like dragging glass across parchment. Private Langley, 2 dugouts down, is humming as he does the same. "Makes you feel civilized, doesn't it?" he says, half smiling, half bleeding from a nick. You shrug. "If civilization smells like this, I'll take barbarism." You both laugh softly, trying not to wake the officer napping nearby. It's strange, this obsession with grooming in a place where mud and death are the main decor. But here's the thing. Shaving wasn't about vanity. A historical fact for tonight. Gas masks. Those bulky rubber contraptions that smelled of rubber and terror needed a clean seal around the face. Even a bit of stubble could break that seal, letting in deadly chlorine or phosgene. So, every morning, rain or gunfire, men shaved. Not for pride, for survival. The air smells of damp wool, smoke, and the faint sweetness of burning tobacco from someone's cigarette. You rinse the razor, watching the brown water curl away like coffee mixed with blood. There's something almost hypnotic about it. You think about home, about clean sinks, about real towels. You try to remember what soap smells like. The memory slips through your fingers. Then there's the quirky fact. Some soldiers, desperate to save time or water, used butter or whale oil as shaving cream. Others swore by candle wax. You tried butter once. It worked until the rat started following you for 3 days. You've gone back to the dry method since. The sun, if it can be called that, is struggling to appear through a haze of smoke and mist. The light here never feels real. It's filtered through ash and gunpowder, always muted, like the world's been dimmed permanently. You can hear distant artillery. Thump, pause, thump, and then the faint flutter of pigeons overhead. Carrier pigeons, maybe. They're the real mail service here, more reliable than the post. You scrape the last of the stubble from your chin, wipe your face with a filthy rag, and pat yourself dry with the least wet part of your sleeve. Langley holds up his helmet like a mirror. "Still ugly," he says. You grin. "But now a clean kind of ugly." He chuckles. "That's the best we can do." A corporal passes by, boots slapping the duckboards, shouting for everyone to get ready for inspection. You groan inwardly. Inspection usually means officers pretending not to see how awful things are. You straighten your tunic, adjust your puttees, and try to look less like you slept in a puddle, which of course you did. A debate among historians pops up here. How effective were these daily routines at maintaining morale? Some argue that they imposed a sense of order on chaos, a small anchor in madness. Others think it was just theatre. Discipline for discipline's sake. You suspect both are true. The act of shaving, of pretending things are normal, lets you trick yourself for a few minutes that they are. The officer arrives, boots somehow spotless, smelling faintly of soap and superiority. "Men," he says, voice clipped and cold, "keep your weapons clean and your spirits cleaner." You resist the urge to roll your eyes. When he moves on, Langley mutters, "Spirits cleaner, eh? He should try our tea." You laugh under your breath, the kind of laugh that doesn't quite reach the eyes but keeps you sane. After inspection, you're given a few minutes to yourself. You sit on a crate pulling out your battered notebook. The pages are soft from moisture, the ink blotted in places. You jot down a few lines, nothing poetic, just details, shaved again. Rain stopped. Jones swears he saw the dog in a helmet. The act of writing feels like another way of shaving, scraping off the grime of the mind. In the background, someone is tuning a harmonica. The notes wobble through the fog, melancholy but alive. You tap your boot in rhythm, watching as a rat climbs over a fallen plank like it owns the place. You can't even be mad. It does. A burst of machine gun fire rattles somewhere to the north. Everyone pauses. Silence after gunfire is the loudest sound there is. You glance up, listening. Nothing follows. Just the steady dripping of trench water. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else curses the weather. Life resumes. You put your razor away, the blade dulled nearly to uselessness. You'll need to trade for another soon. Maybe 2 cigarettes for a fresh one, if the quartermaster's feeling generous. There's a quiet satisfaction in having a clean face, though. Your skin stings, your hands shake, but there's something defiant about it. Langley grins. "We should start charging for shaves, trench barbers." "Sure," you say, "and we'll take payment in rum and clean socks." The idea is absurd and perfect. You both chuckle until the corporal yells again, "Work detail, lads. Sandbags need mending." You sigh, stand up and tuck your notebook away. The shaving ritual is over, and now the day resumes its grind. But as you shoulder your rifle, you catch a glimpse of your reflection again. Faint, warped, but human. For a brief moment, that feels like victory. The sky overhead shifts, a dull bruise of grey turning slightly golden. The morning chorus of distant shells begins anew. You take one last breath, taste the damp air, and follow the others down the trench, ready to face the next bit of endless routine, repairing the mud walls that keep you from drowning. Your face burns from the cold, your neck itches from the rough wool, and your mind drifts between exhaustion and stubborn will. You're still here, still shaving, still alive. Somehow, that's enough. You've just finished scraping the last bit of stubble from your jaw when the call comes down the line, "Mail's in." It's like magic words, the kind that can make dead men grin. A rustle runs through the trench, the sound of boots sloshing through water and breath quickening. Letters are better than breakfast, better than rum, better than a dry pair of socks, which here is saying something. You line up by the makeshift post station, which is really just a wooden crate with "mail" scrawled on it in charcoal. The corporal sorting through envelopes looks like he's performing surgery, gloved in grime, careful not to let the letters fall into the mud. The pile is pitifully small, and everyone knows not everyone's name will be called. Still, you wait. Jones, Langley, Price, Wilkes. Your name doesn't come. For a heartbeat, your chest sinks like it's full of stones. But then, He squints at a smudged envelope. You too, lad. Looks like yours came from Birmingham. You step forward, heart thudding, and take the small rectangle of paper. It's soft and damp at the corners, smelling faintly of tobacco and the strange sweetness of home. Soap, maybe, or roses pressed inside. You sit on an overturned crate, careful not to tear it open too fast. The handwriting is familiar, a little shaky, the ink running where tears or rain, or both, touched it. Dearest, it begins. You smile already. It's from your sister, written weeks ago. She talks about rationing sugar, about your mother's arthritis, about a neighbour who still insists the war will end by Christmas. They've been saying that for 2 years now. She says your dog misses you, and that she's sent a small parcel if the post cooperates. It's just socks, she writes, but clean ones, and I put lavender in them so they'll smell like knotwar. You fold the letter and hold it against your chest for a second. The paper's fragile, but the words hold more weight than any rifle. Around you, the others are reading too. A few men chuckle, some wipe at their eyes like they've just got dust in them. One bloke reads his letter out loud, full of swagger. My girl says she's waiting for me, same as before. Someone mutters, poor sod, and everyone laughs softly. A historical fact here. Letters were the single most important morale booster in the Great War. Over 2 billion pieces of mail passed through the British Army Post Office between 1914 and 1918. Most soldiers wrote home daily if they could. Censorship was strict. Officers read every line before sealing it. But still, it was lifeblood. Ink on paper was how men stayed human. You reach into your breast pocket and pull out your last unfinished reply. The page is blotched from damp, but you smooth it out against your knee. Still alive, you write, as if that's enough. You pause, stare at the mud-caked words and add, miss the smell of rain that isn't mixed with smoke. Then you stop again, chewing the end of your pencil. You want to tell them about Langley's jokes, or the dog in the helmet, or the way sunrise looks like hope painted in rust. But none of that fits, so you just sign your name and fold it. Across the trench, Private Langley is reading his letter upside down. He can't read at all, but he won't admit it. You slide over and offer to help. Your missus says she sent jam, you say. His grin could power a small city. Bless her soul. What kind? Doesn't say. It's jam, mate. Don't need a kind. The corporal's voice cuts through the laughter. No parcels today. Maybe next run groans ripple through the men. Rumour has it that the parcels are where the real treasure is. Cakes, if they survive the trip. Socks and cigarettes. Once, someone even got a tin of peaches. He traded half for a working lighter. Then comes the quirky fact of the day. Soldiers sometimes used old envelopes to roll cigarettes when paper ran out. You've done it yourself, puffing away on someone's words from home. There's something darkly poetic about it. Breathing in a letter meant for comfort, turning sentiment into smoke. You tuck your letter back into your pocket, close to your heart, and pat it like a lucky charm. The others do the same. It's funny how paper becomes armour here. But here's the open debate historians still wrestle with. Did letters really preserve morale, or did they make it harder? Some say they kept men tethered to a world worth surviving for. Others argue that letters reminded soldiers too sharply of what they'd lost, of warmth, laughter, safety, and that made the trenches worse. Reading about peace while surrounded by mud and death could slice both ways. You suspect both are true. The rest of the morning drifts on. Men start swapping reading material, half-torn newspapers, dog-eared novels, jokes scrawled on ration tins. Someone finds an old magazine with a picture of a woman in a feathered hat. It gets passed around reverently, as if it were a sacred relic. You can't help laughing at that. Even the muddiest soldier can still appreciate glamour. The sergeant appears again, shouting about a trench inspection later, and the need to fix the parapet before it caves in. Get moving, lads. The Kaiser won't wait for you to finish your love letters. You roll your eyes, but stand up, tucking your notebook away. Before you go, you glance one more time at your sister's handwriting. The ink has bled a little more, but the words remain. Come home soon, she wrote. Simple, impossible. You whisper it back to the paper, as if it can hear you. You stuff the letter back into your tunic and grab your shovel. The day is waiting, wet, loud, endless. But now, there's a small, lavender-scented warmth pressed against your chest. You climb the fire step, boots slipping, then join the others patching the trench wall. Mud splatters your face, soaking through your sleeves, but it's fine. You've got a letter in your pocket and a reason, however small, to keep standing. Dawn has barely faded into day when the next ritual begins. Stand to at dawn, the trench's most sacred, miserable ceremony. It happens every morning and every evening, no exceptions. You could be knee-deep in rainwater, halfway through a cigarette, or dreaming about toast and butter, doesn't matter. When the whistle blows, you grab your rifle, clamber onto the fire step, and prepare to shoot at shadows. The sky's a thin wash of silver grey, the kind that makes you squint and see things that aren't really there. Mist clings low over no man's land, curling through the rusted tangles of barbed wire. It looks almost peaceful if you squint hard enough, like frost on a meadow, if meadows smelled like death and cordite. You lift your rifle, the metal cold against your palm. Beside you, Langley yawns, eyes bleary. Why bother? Jerry's not mad enough to charge at dawn, he mutters. You shrug. Neither are we. That's the point. The truth is, Stand To isn't just paranoia. It's history written in blood. Early in the war, dawn was prime attack time, when visibility returned but the enemy was still half asleep. So now, everyone stands to. The habit stuck. A historical fact. By 1915, both sides did it religiously, even when they knew no attack was coming. It became a kind of grim superstition, an agreed-upon ritual between enemies who secretly wanted to survive the same morning. The air is still except for the faint ticking of distant gunfire. You can see your breath misting out, the only proof that your lungs are still working. Somewhere down the line, a bird dares to sing. It sounds ridiculous, this cheerful little melody in the middle of apocalypse, but you can't help smiling. You press your cheek to the rifle stock, peering over the parapet. The fog swirls, teasing shapes. Sometimes you swear you see figures moving out there. Once you thought you saw a man walking, calm as anything, until the light shifted and he was gone. Ghost Patrol, Jones called it. They're checking who's due next. A bullet cracks in the distance. Everyone freezes. You duck instinctively, then rise again, scanning the wire. Nothing. Probably a sniper testing his rifle, or maybe just nerves. Langley spits into the mud. Bloody amateurs. His voice is low, more weary than brave. A few yards away, Private Wilkes is adjusting his bayonet, eyes darting over the horizon. He mutters something about the smell of coffee, swears he can smell it drifting from the German side. You sniff the air, and for a moment, you think you smell it too. It's absurd, impossible, but maybe someone is brewing it over there. Maybe, on the other side of the wire, another man is doing exactly what you're doing, standing, waiting, hoping the other doesn't start shooting. The quiet stretches. The only sound now is dripping water from a cracked sandbag. Each drop lands with metronomic precision, like the trench itself has a pulse. You feel your own heartbeat syncing with it. And then, a quirky fact to break the silence. During quiet mornings, some soldiers claimed they could hear conversations from the enemy trenches carried over the mist. Accents blurred, laughter warped by echo. There are even stories of both sides shouting greetings, trading insults, or, more bizarrely, breakfast requests. "Send eggs," someone once yelled across no man's land. "Boil 'em yourself," came the reply. You like to imagine that one actually happened, but you're not laughing now. The stillness feels heavy, like a breath being held by the world itself. You shift your weight, fingers stiff from cold, eyes darting for movement. The mist thickens, then begins to lift slowly as the sun strains upward. And here's where the scholarly debate creeps in. Historians can't quite agree how soldiers experienced fear at dawn. Was it constant, humming in the background like tinnitus? Or did it come in flashes, sharp and clean, then vanish? You suspect it's both. Some mornings you're numb, others you feel every heartbeat like a countdown. The sergeant's voice cuts through the haze. "Steady, lads." Eyes up. You nod, but your gaze keeps flicking toward the horizon. The ground out there glistens wet, cratered, broken. A corpse lies half buried near the wire, frozen in a pose that looks almost peaceful. You've seen him before, every morning actually. The mud keeps him half hidden, half seen, a grim reminder. You've stopped looking too long, or he starts to feel like company. Langley nudges you. "Think Jerry's looking back at us right now?" You smirk. "Probably wondering why we bother shaving." He grins. "Maybe we're all just part of his morning routine too." The thought hangs in the air, absurd and haunting. Minutes pass. The sun climbs higher, bleeding pale gold through the fog. The world looks like it's been sketched in charcoal. Grey lines, brown shadows, everything muted. Then comes the blessed order. Stand down. You exhale, muscles unclenching all at once. It's funny how you never notice the tension until it's gone. You step off the fire step, leaning your rifle against the trench wall. Your hands are shaking, though you tell yourself it's just the cold. Men start to move again, stretching, lighting cigarettes, murmuring. Someone makes a joke about breakfast being served warm, if you like your beef cold. Another replies, better than yesterday's surprise, mud pie a la trench. The laughter is weak but real. You find your tin mug, scoop up the last bit of lukewarm tea from the brazier, and take a sip. It's awful. It's perfect. You sit down on a sandbag, watching as the fog continues to fade. The dead tree in no man's land catches the new light, its limbs stark and skeletal. For a strange moment, it looks like it's stretching, yawning even. Like it too survived another night. Somewhere behind you, a runner passes carrying messages down the line. The day's orders, the next shift, maybe news from command about some offensive far away. You don't care. The sun is out, your rifle didn't jam, and you're still breathing. For now, that's the whole war distilled into 3 facts. You let your head fall back against the trench wall, eyes half closed. Same again tonight, Langley asks, still leaning on his rifle. You nod. Same every night. He grins, weary but alive. Then I'll see you at dawn, mate. The mud seeps through your coat. The air smells faintly of smoke, and you feel the strange, heavy comfort of routine. The world might explode later, but for this one morning, you've done your duty. You've stood, waited, watched, and survived. And that's what passes for victory here. The trench wall collapses 3 times before lunch. Once because the rain decided gravity should have its fun, once because someone leaned against it too hard, and once, most impressively, because a shell landed close enough to turn the clay into pudding. Repairing the trench is supposed to be routine work, but out here, routine means mud wrestling with death. You've been handed a shovel that's lost most of its handle, its metal bent like a smile. The sergeant barks orders. Sandbags! Stack 'em neat. Keep your heads down. You and Langley exchange a look. He grins. Neat, he mutters. Sure, let's impress the Kaiser with symmetry. The wall in front of you is a miserable sight. Half collapsed, oozing brown sludge, studded with bits of broken duckboard and someone's discarded tin of bully beef. You wade into it anyway, the mud sucking at your boots like a hungry animal. Every step is a negotiation. You throw the first shovel of muck onto the parapet, where it slides off with a satisfying plop. So it begins. A historical fact worth chewing on while you dig. Trench maintenance was as critical as combat itself. The average trench could collapse within days without constant upkeep. Rain, shellfire, rats and rot. Each one a slow enemy. The army produced entire manuals on trench engineering, complete with diagrams of ideal drainage angles and proper sandbag layering. You've seen those diagrams. They might as well have been fairy tales. Langley hums a tune while he works, off-key and loud enough to draw a glare from the corporal. You keep rhythm with your shovel, pretending you're back home doing garden work. Except your garden never screamed when artillery passed overhead. The mud isn't just wet, it's alive. Worms, roots, and the occasional rat tail squirm underfoot. When you dig deep, the earth gives off a smell like wet iron. You tell yourself it's just minerals, not what you know it probably is. There's a moment of comic relief when Private Jones slips and vanishes waist-deep into a sump pit. The trench erupts in laughter. Even the sergeant cracks a smile before hauling him out by the collar. Jones coughs, spits mud, and raises his arms in victory. "Spa days on me, lads," he crows. The laughter rolls down the line like a small miracle. A quirky fact bubbles up as you dig. Archaeologists who've excavated WWI trenches in France still find graffiti carved into the wooden walls. Names, dirty jokes, crude drawings, even recipes. One British soldier in 1917 reportedly carved the words, "Tell Ma I'm doing fine, still hating porridge," into the support beam of his dugout. It's that same mix of despair and absurd humour you understand perfectly now. The trench fills with the steady rhythm of shovels and muttered curses. The men fall into a strange synchronised trance. Dig, lift, slap, tamp. Rain begins again, light at first, then harder. Drops drum against your helmet, trickle down your neck. You'd complain, but you're too far past that now. Rain is just another companion here. There's an odd sense of satisfaction in rebuilding what the war keeps destroying. It's like patching up the earth itself. You glance toward no man's land, the horizon still scarred, wire-twisted, shell holes filled with greenish water. Somewhere out there, the Germans are probably digging too, shoring up their trenches, muttering the same curses in a different language. You imagine you could wave across the void, two tired souls in matching mud uniforms. Langley pauses to catch his breath, leaning on his shovel. You ever think about how much of Europe's just holes now? He asks. You nod, wiping sweat, or maybe rain from your face. When this is over, the map'll just be mud with borders, he laughs softly. Maybe they'll plant something in it. That thought sticks with you as you work. What could possibly grow here again? Grass maybe, stubborn and thin. Maybe poppies, those strange flowers that seem to love broken ground. The idea feels oddly hopeful, and you tuck it away like a secret. Then comes the scholarly debate of the day. Were trenches more prison or protection? Some historians call them tombs, others call them shields. You're not sure. They keep you alive, sure, but they also trap you, hold you in a place where time loops endlessly. The same mud, the same tasks, the same whistle at dawn. You start to think of yourself as part of the landscape, another fixture of dirt and fatigue. The corporal calls for more sandbags, so you climb up to the supply pile. The air is sharp now, wind slicing through the fog. Your hands ache from gripping the shovel, your back a dull, constant knot. You hoist a bag onto your shoulder, it's heavier than it looks, filled with soggy clay, and stagger back to the parapet. You dump it, pat it down, repeat. It's tedious, endless, and somehow comforting in its repetition. Around midday, someone yells that lunch is ready, another euphemism for disappointment. You get a few bites of tinned beef, some hard bread, and tepid water. You eat standing, shovel still in hand. Langley raises his ration tin in mock salute. To fine dining, he says. May the mud always pair nicely with beef. You clink tins and take another bite. It tastes like rust, but you're too tired to care. The rain lets up just long enough to tease you, then returns. A low rumble rolls through the ground, a shell exploding somewhere far off. You stop digging for a moment, listening. The sound fades, leaving the air strangely hollow. That's the rhythm of this place. Noise, then silence, then noise again. By late afternoon, the trench looks marginally less suicidal. The walls are reinforced, the drainage is slightly improved, and the sergeant even nods in grudging approval. Good work, lads, he says. She'll hold for another day. It's a small victory, but you take it. You collapse onto a crate, shovel across your knees. Your arms feel like they've been filled with lead. Langley sits beside you, boots caked thick. He pulls a cigarette from his pocket, miraculously dry, and lights it with a shaky match. He passes it over. You inhale, the smoke warm and bitter. Worth the mud, you say? He grins. Everything's worth it till it's not. You both sit in silence, staring at the wall you just rebuilt. It's ugly, crooked, scarred, but solid. A small fortress against chaos. You can almost believe it'll last through the night. The rain finally stops. A sliver of sunlight pushes through the clouds, turning the puddles gold for a fleeting moment. It's so beautiful it feels like a trick. You laugh quietly, shake your head. The mud, the rain, the endless work. It's all ridiculous, but somehow you're still here, still digging, still rebuilding a world determined to fall apart. Night falls slow in the trenches, and with it comes the true enemy. Rats. Not the timid kind that dart for shadows. No, these are beasts, veterans of war in their own right. You'd swear some of them are the size of house cats. They scurry over sandbags and along duckboards, bold as thieves, their slick fur gleaming under the dim trench lamps. One darts across your boot. You freeze, half amused, half horrified. Langley whispers, "Don't move." They can smell fear, you smirk. They can smell everything. You've long since stopped screaming at them. You've stopped trying to shoo them away too. The rats are part of the trench, same as the mud and the smell and the never-ending drip, drip, drip of water from above. They're survivors, just like you, maybe better ones. Private Jones claims one of them stole his biscuit right out of his hand once. Another swears a rat dragged off a whole piece of bread in its teeth like a pirate with treasure. There's laughter when these stories make the rounds, but no one doubts them. You've seen what these creatures can do, A historical fact for this long stinking night. Trench rats were a genuine menace. They thrived on the scraps of human food, and sometimes, gruesomely, on the unburied dead. Some grew to over a pound in weight, fat and fearless. The British Army even organised rat hunts as morale-boosting competitions. You've participated once, armed with a bayonet and a bad attitude. You won 2 cigarettes for the largest catch. You didn't eat for a day after. Tonight the rats seem louder than usual, their claws clicking along the planks. One perches on a beam above your head, staring down with the kind of confidence usually reserved for generals. "Evening, sir," you mutter. It blinks, unimpressed. Langley tosses a pebble. The rat doesn't flinch. "They'll inherit the earth, these ones," he says, "and they'll do a better job than us." He's probably right. You settle into your dugout, the small space you share with 3 others. It smells like damp wool, tobacco smoke, and something faintly sweet from a tin of jam someone's been hoarding. You light a candle stub, its flame barely surviving the draught. Shadows dance along the wooden walls. The candlelight makes the trench look softer somehow, almost cosy, if you squint past the horror. That's when Jones starts telling the quirky fact of the evening, a trench rumour that makes the rounds whenever morale dips low. He says that some officers on the French side have begun keeping cats as mascots to hunt rats. Proper soldiers, he says solemnly. Fur and whiskers, no fear of vermin. Someone scoffs. "I'll believe it when I see one wearing a tin hat." Jones grins. "Oh, they've got those too." Special issue. You all laugh until tears sting your eyes. It's absurd, but absurdity is the only thing that still feels honest. Somewhere out there, maybe there is a cat wearing a helmet, prowling the front lines like some furry lieutenant. You'd salute him if you met him. The conversation drifts. Someone asks what you'll do when the war's over. "Sleep," says Langley. "For a month." "Eat," says Jones. "Something that doesn't come out of a tin." You think about it for a while before answering. Walk somewhere quiet. Without looking for cover, the words surprise even you. The trench quiets again. Only the rats keep moving, their tiny feet scuttling in the dark. You hear one squeal, a short, sharp cry. Maybe a trap got it. You hope so. Here's the open debate historians still gnaw on like those rats. How bad were the conditions, really? Diaries vary wildly. Some soldiers describe trenches as bearable, even boring, while others paint them as circles of hell. The truth lies somewhere between, you think. Misery becomes manageable when it's constant. The human mind adapts, just as the rats do. You learn to live with the crawling, scratching, biting. You stop fighting what you can't change. You stretch your legs, feeling the ache in your calves. The boards beneath you are slick, and every shift of weight brings that familiar sucking sound. You reach into your pocket and find a crumb of biscuit from earlier, then hesitate. The rats are watching. You break it in half and toss one piece toward the shadows. "Truce," you whisper. Langley groans. "You're feeding the enemy." "Maybe he'll tell his friends to skip my boots tonight," you say. The candle sputters. A gust of wind sneaks through the dugout's cracks, and the flame bends low. You cup it with your hand. For a second, you catch the glint of dozens of small eyes just beyond the reach of light. Tiny reflections of your own endurance. You almost admire them. You remember a rumour from another regiment, a trench that got so overrun with rats, the men called in artillery to clear it. No one knows if it's true. It doesn't matter. Out here, truth and legend mix like mud and blood. Langley's voice drifts through the dark. "Funny thing," he says, "the rats don't care who wins." "Why would they?" you reply. "They've already won." That earns a low chuckle. The candle dies soon after, smoke curling like a ghost. You sit in near darkness, listening to the shuffle of tiny feet, the groan of shifting earth, the heartbeat of a war that refuses to sleep. Somewhere above, a flare goes up, white light flooding the trench for an instant. The rats vanish into holes, the shadows snapping back sharp and deep. The night returns heavier. You pull your coat tighter, lean your head against the wall and close your eyes. Your last thought before drifting off is strangely comforting. Even if the world burns, the rats will carry the story forward. Someone has to. Morning again, or what passes for it here. You wake to the same damp air and the same half-light that never quite decides to be day. The sky above the trench is a dull, uncommitted grey, the kind that can't remember if it's morning or evening. You stretch. bones creaking, muscles protesting like old machinery. Somewhere to your right, Jones is already muttering about breakfast, which means you've survived another night. It's a low bar, but it's the only one that matters. Today isn't a busy day, though that's a relative term. It's one of those long, slow stretches when nothing much happens. No raids, no major bombardments, just the eerie calm between storms, the kind that drives you mad because the silence hums louder than the gunfire ever did. You settle onto the fire step, back against the wall, boots planted in the mud. A trickle of water runs past your heel, winding its way along the duckboards. The sound becomes a rhythm, a heartbeat for the trench itself. You take out your knife and start cleaning under your fingernails, pretending you're doing something productive. Langley drops down beside you with a groan. "If I sit still long enough," he says, "do you think I'll turn into part of the wall?" "Already halfway there," you reply. The two of you share a chuckle, then lapse into silence. Not the comfortable kind, though. The trench has a special brand of quiet. Thick, uneasy, full of small noises that your brain keeps mislabeling as danger. The creak of wood sounds like footsteps. A shovel clanging in the distance could be a rifle bolt. Even the breeze through the wire can sound like a whisper. A historical fact for this slow crawl of a morning. Most soldiers in the First World War spent far more time waiting than fighting. For every hour in combat there were days, sometimes weeks, of monotony. The long wait, they called it. Psychologists later coined the term anticipatory stress, but you just call it nerves that never shut up. The worst part is the almosts. You almost hear shells, you almost see movement, you almost sleep. Langley flicks a pebble into the puddle. "Think the generals are bored too?" he asks. You smirk. "Doubt it. They've got chairs." You pull out your tin of tobacco, half empty now, and roll a cigarette with fingers that won't quite stop shaking. The paper sticks from the damp. You strike a match, shielding it from the wind, and inhale. The smoke burns your throat but settles your mind. The first drag always feels like taking control of something, even if it's just your lungs. Somewhere down the line a harmonica starts playing. The tune is ragged, wobbly, but it carries. It's a long way to Tipperary, of course. It's always Tipperary. Someone starts humming along, another joins in, and soon the trench has a kind of rhythm again. You tap your boot in time. A rat scurries past, dragging what looks suspiciously like a button. You don't even flinch. He's just part of the band at this point. As you stare out toward no man's land, the horizon shimmers in the weak light. The wire gleams like frost, and the cratered ground seems almost still. For a second, it could be a normal field after heavy rain, until the wind shifts and the smell of rot finds you again. You wonder, briefly, what the German trench looks like this morning. You imagine their men doing the same thing, smoking, waiting, staring at you through the mist. Maybe one of them's got a harmonica too. Then comes the quirky fact. During long lulls in fighting, soldiers on both sides sometimes shouted across to each other, insults mostly, sometimes jokes. Once, a British regiment supposedly held an impromptu singing contest with their German counterparts across no man's land, each side taking turns with familiar songs. The officers hated it, of course, but for a brief hour the war paused for melody. You like that story. You hope it's true. You take another drag, flick ash into the mud and watch it dissolve. "You think we'll ever stop being jumpy?" you ask. Langley shrugs. "Doubt it. When I get home I'll probably hit the floor every time someone drops a pan." You smile. "At least you'll have floors again." A faint rumble rolls in the distance. Not thunder, not quite artillery either. You tense instinctively, but it fades. Nothing follows. Still, the sound leaves a ghost in the air, like a memory of danger that refuses to fade. That's the thing historians argue about, the open debate of the day. Did boredom or terror do more damage to soldiers' minds? Some say the fear broke them. Others say the monotony did. You suspect it was both, working together like a cruel duet. Fear spikes, boredom stretches, and between them sanity gets stretched thin. Jones wanders over holding a dented tin cup. "Tea's warm if you don't mind it muddy," he offers. You take it gratefully, sip, and hand it back. "Tastes like the Somme," you say. "That's because it is the Somme," he replies with a grin. The harmonica fades, replaced by the murmur of small talk. Men talk about food they'll eat someday, women they'll marry, pubs they'll revisit. The future becomes a kind of collective daydream. You join in, describing a bakery in Birmingham that probably doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't matter. The lie is warm. The hours drag on, marked only by the occasional shout from an officer or the distant pop of a flare. The trench feels like a living thing, breathing, shifting, groaning. You find yourself tracing lines in the mud with your boot, drawing shapes that disappear as soon as the next drip of water hits. Langley leans back, helmet tilted over his eyes. If they gave out medals for waiting, he says, we'd all be generals by now. You chuckle softly. Yeah, the order of eternal patience. As afternoon slides toward evening, the light turns softer, golden even. You catch yourself staring at it, how it catches the rim of your helmet, how it glints on puddles like tiny pieces of home. It almost feels sacred, the kind of light you'd pray to if you still remembered how. For a moment, the front goes quiet. No shells, no shouts. Just the hum of wind and the faint rustle of rats in the distance. You close your eyes, breathing in the air, muddy, heavy, but real. You let yourself feel it, the fragile peace between storms, and then the whistle blows again, breaking the spell. Stand to at dusk, same as dawn. The waiting starts all over. You sigh, pick up your rifle and climb the fire step. Another round of vigilance, another hour alive. The evening stand ends without drama, just the usual chorus of yawns and muttered curses, and soon the trench melts back into its familiar half-light rhythm. You can almost feel the collective sigh ripple down the line. No attack, no alarm, no need to sprint for cover tonight. You shift your rifle off your shoulder, stretch your arms until your joints pop, and drop down beside Langley on a half-rotted ammunition crate that doubles as the night's social club. He flicks open his tobacco tin, which is empty except for crumbs. You ever notice, he says, how a man can get nostalgic for boredom? You laugh through your nose. Give it time. We'll be writing love letters to monotony. Someone a few yards away coughs, then another answers with an exaggerated wheeze. A third throws in a mock trumpet noise, and before you know it, half the platoon is making a terrible orchestra of chest infections. The absurdity draws real laughter, low and raw, but laughter all the same. That's how trench evenings work. The darkness creeps in, and so do the jokes. Black humour is the only thing that makes sense here. You light a cigarette with a shaking match and pass it down. It makes a slow circle. Hands, mouths, smoke, breath. Everyone taking turns at something warm, something human. A historical fact fits neatly here, like a match sliding into its box. British soldiers on the Western Front went through nearly 1,000 tons of tobacco each month. The army encouraged it. Cigarettes calmed nerves, filled empty time, and frankly, masked the smell of rot. You once read a notice tacked to a post that said, "Smoke keeps morale high and vermin low." You're still waiting to see proof of either claim. Langley exhales a ribbon of smoke and says, "Imagine being clean." The thought alone gets a round of chuckles. Private Jones answers, "Don't say things you can't deliver." Someone else chimes in, "When I get home, I'm never bathing again." Keep the smell. Scare the neighbours. The laughter builds until even the sergeant, normally allergic to humour, cracks a grin. He shakes his head. "You lot laugh now. We've got wire duty later." The groans come in unison. Wire duty. Crawling out into no man's land after dark to repair the barbed wire defences means flirting with death and tetanus in equal measure. You nudge Langley. "Remind me to fake a limp," he smirks. "You'd need both legs broken to get out of it." The light fades completely, the trench lamps sputtering to life one by one. Shadows dance over the sandbags and everything feels smaller, safer, and more dangerous at once. A pot of something vaguely stew-shaped bubbles over a brazier nearby. The smell is questionable but comforting. You spoon some into your mess tin. It's hot, which is all that matters. Langley sniffs it suspiciously. "What do you think it is?" he asks. You peer inside. "Mystery number 3. "Better than mystery number 2, he replies. "That one fought back." Everyone chuckles again, grateful for the distraction. Humour here isn't just survival, it's rebellion. Each laugh feels like a slap in the face to the war itself, a small defiant heartbeat that says, "We're still here." Now for the quirky fact. Psychologists studying trench diaries decades later found that soldiers' jokes often revolved around death, food, and bodily functions, exactly the things they had no control over. Gallows humour was a shield. You joked about what scared you so it lost its fangs. A common saying back then was, If you can laugh at it, you can outlast it. You repeat that to yourself sometimes when the guns start. The stew sits heavy in your stomach and the air grows colder. Somewhere in the darkness, a rat splashes through a puddle, followed by another smaller squeak. Probably a mate or offspring. You shake your head. Even the rats have families, you say quietly. Langley nods, and we've got the army. The conversation drifts to rumours. Always rumours. A new offensive, a ceasefire, extra rations, shorter rotations. None of it's true, but everyone needs something to talk about. Jones insists that the Americans will end it soon. They've got tanks that move like horses, he says. Real horses, someone asks. Metal ones, Jones replies confidently. And flamethrowers that shoot rainbows. You raise an eyebrow. You've been licking the cordite again, haven't you? The laughter that follows is weary but genuine. The open debate among historians, and the one running silently through your own head, is whether this camaraderie was real friendship or just necessity. Did men love each other like brothers, or simply cling to whoever was close enough to keep them sane? You think it's both. Affection here grows like fungus, in the damp, in the dark, wherever the light can't quite reach. A lull settles over the trench. Cigarettes burn low. Talk fades to murmurs. The sky above is a patchwork of clouds and faint stars, the kind of view that makes you forget where you are for half a second. You remember lying in a real field once, counting constellations with someone whose face you can't quite recall anymore. Funny how memory blurs when the present keeps screaming. Langley breaks the silence. If you could be anywhere right now, anywhere that's dry, you interrupt. He grins. Fair. Dry and warm? Now you're talking fantasy. Someone further down starts humming again, soft and tuneless. It drifts over the trench, blending with the creak of wood and the distant rumble of artillery far away. For a moment, it almost sounds like the sea, slow, deep, endless. You close your eyes, lean back against the trench wall and breathe out smoke. The damp air presses close, smelling of earth and oil and sweat. You feel the faint warmth of the man sitting beside you, the human proof that you're not alone in this endless dark. Eventually the sergeant calls names for wire duty. Yours isn't on the list tonight. You exhale in quiet relief and offer a sympathetic grimace to the unlucky few gathering their gear. Bring me back a souvenir, you tell one, maybe some clean air. When they disappear into the night, the trench feels emptier, as if part of its heartbeat has stepped outside the body. You lie back on the crate, using your pack as a pillow. The stars sharpen above, impossibly far, impossibly peaceful. Somewhere out there, beyond the horizon, there's laughter in a pub, a piano playing, someone frying bacon. You hold the thought like a match between your fingers, bright, tiny, precious. Langley murmurs, half asleep. See you in the morning, mate. Yeah, you whisper. See you in the morning. The night folds around you, damp and soft. You let it. By the time morning rolls in again, your stomach feels like a hollow drum, so when nature calls, and it always does, you sigh, grab your tin mug, and begin the perilous pilgrimage to the latrine. There's no glamour here, no romance in war stories about this part, but the truth is that most of a soldier's bravery in the trenches isn't about facing bullets. It's about facing the latrine before breakfast. You slosh along the duckboards, boots heavy with muck, and follow the unmistakable smell. The latrine is a plank suspended over a pit, sometimes with a bit of canvas for privacy, more often not. You've heard rumours of trenches in better sectors having actual seats, maybe even sandbag walls. You assume that's propaganda. Private Jones greets you with a grim salute as he emerges from the facility, trousers half-buttoned, nose wrinkled. All yours, he says, grinning. Mind the splashes. Jerry's got nothing on what's brewing in there. You pinch your nose and mutter, frontline heroism. Here's a historical fact to ease the horror. Sanitation was one of the British Army's biggest struggles during the war. Trenches often flooded and latrines overflowed, turning entire sections into health hazards. Dysentery, typhus, trench fever, all frequent visitors. Some battalions developed intricate drainage systems, even separate officer-only latrines, though those rarely fared better. Soldiers joked that the smell alone could kill faster than shrapnel. You perch precariously over the pit, trying to breathe through your mouth. The buzzing of flies sounds like a miniature symphony. You focus on the sound instead of the smell. A rat darts past your boot. undeterred by human dignity. You mutter, "Morning, Major." He ignores you. Langley passes by, waving a hand in front of his face. Smells like victory. You shoot him a look. "You volunteering to swap duties?" He laughs. "Not for all the rum in France." Which is fitting, because the quirky fact of this miserable interlude is that the army actually issued daily rum rations, partly as a morale booster, and partly to numb the senses, especially before battle or after gruesome work. In some regiments, soldiers joked that rum was the only reason the trenches didn't revolt. You think that's only half a joke. You finish your grim ritual and step away, grateful for the weak breeze that carries the stench off toward no man's land. You splash your hands with the cold water from a nearby bucket that looks more brown than clear, but at least it's something. Hygiene here is relative. You rub your hands dry on your tunic, which doesn't help. You head back down the trench where the men are starting to stir. Some are already smoking, others pulling on boots still wet from yesterday. A new recruit, baby-faced and pale, is standing awkwardly with a shovel, not sure where to be. The sergeant points him toward a sandbag pile, then mutters to you, "Poor kid's got about a week before he stops smelling nice." You laugh softly, but there's truth in it. Fresh recruits always have that strange clean aura. Soap, starch, and hope. The trench takes that within days. It's not just dirt that settles on you here. It's something heavier, invisible. Langley returns carrying a kettle of what he calls coffee. It's dark water with ambitions. You take a sip anyway, grimacing. "Needs more mud." He nods. "Don't worry, it's settling." The day feels strangely still. A few shots echo far off, nothing close enough to matter. You take the quiet as a small blessing. A few men begin mending uniforms, sewing up holes with thread stripped from socks. Others are playing cards, using a tin lid as a table. There's a calm rhythm to it all, this fragile little pocket of civilization built out of filth and fatigue. And here's the open scholarly debate. Historians often wonder what normal meant for soldiers here. How do you define it when your whole world is one narrow strip of earth between life and oblivion? Some letters describe trench life as routine, almost domestic. Others call it pure madness. You're not sure they're opposites. Maybe normal is just madness you get used to. A corporal passes by carrying a sack of turnips, today's ration supplement. The men groan collectively. "Turnips again," Jones moans. "If I see another one, I'll start digging a tunnel to Germany." Langley holds up a piece of bread. "Mix it with this. Call it gourmet." Someone nearby hums a tune. Something soft, almost tender. The sound blends with the distant artillery, a strange duet between beauty and chaos. You find yourself humming along before realizing you know the song. It's an old pub favourite. You can almost taste warm ale and laughter. The memory stings. You sit back against the trench wall, legs stretched out, eyes half closed. The smell still lingers, of course. It always lingers. But now it's just part of the air. You think about the absurdity of it all. How every man here spends his day eating, digging and praying for a few minutes of comfort, yet still finds ways to laugh, to joke, to share a smoke. The human spirit, you think, must be either indestructible or very, very stubborn. Langley breaks your thoughts. "You ever think we'll tell people about this?" he asks. You smirk. "Sure. We'll say we fought bravely and smelled great," he chuckles. "I'll leave out the latrine part." "Best for everyone," you say. The sergeant yells something about wire patrol tonight, but his voice feels distant. The trench hums softly. Low conversation, scraping boots, a kettle's hiss. The mud squelches like a heartbeat. You take another sip of coffee and look up. The sky has cleared for once, a streak of pale blue stretching over the shattered horizon. You watch it for a long time. Out here, even a clean sky feels like a miracle. The day never really changes colours here. It just shifts tones, like an old photograph fading in slow motion. The sun doesn't shine so much as glow weakly. The light diffused through fog and smoke. Around mid-afternoon, someone yells the only words guaranteed to pull every soldier upright. "Rum ration!" You look up from cleaning your rifle, mud crusting under your fingernails, and feel your spine straighten like a marionette string. Rum time isn't about the drink. It's about the reminder that you're still worth serving. The corporal carries the tin bucket like a priest bearing the chalice. His assistant follows with dented mugs. The men line up, eyes brightening, voices buzzing. "Careful now," the corporal says. "It's medicine, not pleasure." Which is nonsense, of course. It's both, and everyone knows it. When your turn comes, he fills your mug halfway. The smell hits you first. Molasses, smoke, something that bites like firewood soaked in sugar. You nod in thanks and lift it to your lips. The burn hits immediately, sharp enough to make your teeth ache, but the warmth that follows feels like life itself. Langley raises his mug next to you. To surviving the morning, he says, you clink metal rims. To surviving the next one, you answer. The line of men raises a ragged chorus of mock toasts. To mud, someone calls. To socks that aren't alive, shouts another. Jones lifts his mug solemnly. To the Queen, and to whoever sends more of this. Laughter breaks out, the kind that feels almost dangerous, too full of joy for such a miserable place. A historical fact. The British Army introduced the daily rum ration in the Napoleonic era, but during World War I it became practically sacred. Each soldier received about half a gill, roughly a small shot, served before dawn or after heavy shelling. Officers often watered it down, claiming to preserve discipline. The men disagreed, loudly and regularly. After the toast, the trench comes alive. Men loosen up, laughter flows easier, shoulders drop. The warmth in your stomach spreads outward, like an internal campfire. For a few blessed minutes, you can't taste the mud or smell the rot. You lean back on a sandbag, grin sideways at Langley and say, "Almost feels like a holiday." "Only one with a 90% mortality rate," he answers. You chuckle, sipping the last drops. The alcohol numbs just enough to dull the edge of the constant noise, the faint thuds of distant artillery, the soft drip of trench water, the clatter of tools. Everything blurs a little, which helps. Jones predictably gets theatrical after his drink. He climbs onto a crate and starts giving what he calls the sermon according to rum. "Brothers," he shouts, wobbling slightly, "we're gathered here to celebrate our glorious suffering," the men cheer, "and what shall deliver us from this muddy purgatory?" "Rum," the trench answers in unison. "And what shall we do if we run out?" Jones pauses dramatically. "Invent more." You're laughing so hard your sides ache. Even the sergeant lets it go, shaking his head with a smile he pretends isn't there. A quirky fact. During the war, soldiers gave their rum rations nicknames: Liquid Courage, Trench Tea, the Bishop's Blessing. Some claimed it improved marksmanship. Others used it for makeshift disinfectant or to bribe cooks for extra bread. There's even a report of one battalion mixing rum with condensed milk to create what they proudly called British eggnog. You can only imagine the stomach consequences. The warmth doesn't last long though. Within an hour the rum glow fades, replaced by the familiar fatigue. You stretch, feeling the ache settle back into your bones. The men return to their tasks, patching walls, checking rifles, writing letters. The laughter fades into murmurs. You take out your notebook again, trying to write something worth keeping. The words come slow. "Had rum today." Still breathing. Langley says we're unkillable drunks. You smile at the line, then close the book. Sometimes that's enough. Just recording proof of life. Then the wind shifts, and the smell returns. Decay, oil, wet wood, and the faint sweetness of cordite from old explosions. It's the scent of the front. Permanent, inescapable. You inhale deeply, not because you like it, but because it's the only smell left that tells you where you are. Here's the open, scholarly debate that historians still argue about. Was the rum ration a blessing or a curse? Some say it saved sanity, dulled fear, kept men warm and willing. Others claim it numbed them too much, made discipline harder, turned soldiers reckless. You think about it, swirling the last drop in your mug. Maybe both are true. Maybe it was the line between courage and collapse, a single mouthful of warmth that said, "You can get through one more day." As the afternoon drifts toward evening, a few men doze against the trench wall, mouths open, snoring softly. Others play cards with torn scraps of paper, gambling buttons and cigarette ends. You watch them, smiling faintly. You've seen this scene so many times it's almost holy. The soft hum of life continuing, indifferent to the war around it. Langley pulls his coat tighter and mutters, "Almost warm now." You nod. "Almost." The sergeant calls out for an equipment check before dusk. The spell breaks. You drain the last of your rum, tasting the metallic tang from the mug, and hand it back to the corporal. You stretch your arms, feeling the ache again, but also that stubborn pulse of life under it. Rum or not, something stronger keeps you upright. Habit, maybe. Or hope, pretending to be habit. The first stars blink through the smoky sky as you shoulder your rifle. Another night ahead, another chance to stay alive. You glance once more at your empty mug and whisper, "Same time tomorrow, eh?" Langley hears and grins. "If the world's still here," you grin back, "if we're still here." The night wind carries the faint echo of laughter down the line, soft as prayer, real as breath. The rum's warmth fades by nightfall, replaced by the damp cold that seems to crawl straight out of the earth. You pull your greatcoat tighter, but the chill still seeps through, a familiar old friend by now. The trench is quieter than usual, almost solemn. It's the smell that's louder tonight. The thick, sour blend of rot, oil, and unwashed wool. It's in your skin, your clothes, your very breath. The smell never leaves. You take a slow walk along the duckboards, trying to stretch your legs. Every few steps you step over puddles that glimmer faintly in the lamplight, slick with oil. Somewhere far off, artillery murmurs like a storm moving away. It's almost peaceful, until you breathe too deep. The stench hits like a wall. You've grown used to it, in the way a person grows used to pain, acknowledging it without ever really accepting it. It's not just dirt and mould, it's something heavier, something human. You cover your mouth with your sleeve out of instinct, even though that never helps. A historical fact. The stench of the trenches was infamous. It came from a deadly mixture: unwashed bodies, sewage, gunpowder, decaying food, and yes, death itself. The soil was full of corpses, and when it rained, the ground quite literally exhaled. Soldiers reported that the smell was so strong it clung to them even after the war, seeping from their uniforms, their skin, their memories. Some said they could still smell it decades later. You find Langley sitting on an ammo box, smoking a cigarette that barely glows in the dark. "Can't sleep?" you ask. He shakes his head. "Can't breathe." He gestures toward the fog rising over the trench wall. It's like the air's rotting too. You sit beside him, both of you silent for a while. You try to breathe shallowly through your mouth, but the taste is worse, like rust and wet ashes. The mind plays cruel tricks here. Once you notice a smell, it never lets go. You swear you can taste the earth itself, the sour mix of life and death in every breath. Langley smirks suddenly. "You know what the worst part is?" he asks. "After a few weeks you stop noticing it. Then when you do notice it again, you realise that means something's died nearby." You grimace. "That's comforting," he shrugs. "Honesty's the only luxury we've got." You shift on the box, your boots squelching in mud that smells faintly metallic. "I miss the smell of soap," you admit. "Or rain that didn't fall through gunpowder." Langley nods. "I miss the smell of bread. Fresh, warm bread. My mum used to make loaves that steamed when you broke them open." He pauses, eyes unfocused. "Can't even remember what yeast smells like anymore." You look up at the night sky, thin stars fighting through the haze. The wind changes, and for a brief moment the smell lightens. It's still foul, but it carries a trace of something else. Wood smoke, maybe, or cooked meat from a distant cookhouse. It's enough to make you hungry, enough to make you forget. Then predictably a rat scurries past, dragging something small and pale. You look away quickly. You've learned that curiosity is dangerous here. Here comes the quirky fact. Soldiers sometimes developed trench perfumes by dabbing their scarves with anything aromatic they could find. Peppermint oil, soap scraps, even shaving cream. Some swore by tobacco smoke as the best cover scent. Others used letters from home, pressing them against their faces to smell the paper instead of the air. There's even a recorded account of one captain rubbing coffee grounds on his hands before inspecting the line. You'd do the same if you could find any. A faint breeze stirs the sandbags, bringing with it a new whiff of something worse. Langley groans. "That's it. I'm moving to Canada." "You just dig another trench there," you say. "Smells universal now." He chuckles, low and tired. "Maybe that's what peace will smell like. Clean air. Just air." That thought lingers between you. The idea of clean air feels fantastical, almost holy. You try to imagine it. A breeze that smells of pine or sea salt instead of sulphur and decay. You can't. Your imagination has limits these days. The scholarly debate for the night floats up naturally. Was sensory overload part of what broke men down? Historians and psychologists argue about it. Some say constant filth and stench desensitized soldiers, numbing them until they became machines. Others think it eroded their minds over time, driving them quietly mad. You suspect both are true, like everything else here. You can't smell this much life and death, without losing something of yourself in the process. Langley stubs out his cigarette, flicking the stub into the muck. It makes a faint hiss. You ever think about how we'll explain this smell to people at home, he asks. You shake your head. You can't. They'll think you're exaggerating, or they'll just wrinkle their noses and move on. He laughs softly. Maybe we'll just bottle it. Sell it as Eau de Victory. You grin. Guaranteed to clear a room faster than chlorine gas. The humour helps, as it always does. You breathe through your mouth again, focusing on the coolness of the air instead of the taste. You tell yourself it's just another part of the landscape. Same as the mud, the wire, the endless waiting. You even start to believe it. Somewhere to your left, a soldier snores. Another murmurs in his sleep, probably dreaming of somewhere without this constant heaviness in the lungs. You envy him. You close your eyes, pressing your sleeve against your face to block the smell. The wool is damp, but it carries a hint of tobacco and candle wax. For a second, you imagine it's the scent of home. Wood fires, bread, rain-soaked streets. You know it's a lie, but it's a good one. Langley's voice drifts softly. Night, mate. Night, you murmur, still breathing shallow. The wind dies. The smell thickens again, but you're too tired to care. You let it wash over you like fog, another layer of the war's strange embrace. Morning begins with a rustle that moves down the trench like wind through dry grass. Mail again. The shout travels ahead of the runner. Post! Get your post! And men straighten up as if the word itself contains calories. You're halfway through scraping mud from your boots when you drop the brush and join the shuffle toward the corporal's crate. The smell, the damp, the cold, all forgotten for a moment. The corporal's hands are black with grime, but he handles the envelopes like relics. Each name he calls lands like a small miracle. Jones, Price, Langley. You wait. The pause before your name always stretches too long. Finally, you too. From Birmingham again. The paper's soft, the corners rounded from travel. A smudge of lavender hits you before you even unfold it. You sit on a crate, fingers shaking more from excitement than cold. The first words tilt the world upright. Still thinking of you every day. It's your sister again. She writes about ration coupons, about how the city seems quieter without the church bells. They melted the metal down for shells. She says the neighbour's boy is joined up, that everyone swears the war must be over by Easter. You read that line twice, smiling, because hope on paper feels weightless, believable. A historical fact to pin this moment. Between 1914 and 1918, the British Postal Service delivered roughly 12 million letters to the front every week. They moved faster than bullets sometimes, 3 to 4 days from London to the line if luck held. The system was so efficient that one general called it the nervous system of the army. Reading was as essential as eating. Langley drops beside you with his own letter, the corners already damp from his hands. From my mum, he says softly. She keeps sending prayers I can't pronounce. He chuckles, half sad, half touched. I think they work, though. You both fall quiet, reading. The trench itself hushes. Even the rats seem to respect the sanctity of mail call. All along the line, faces bend over paper, lit by thin daylight. Some smile, some stare blankly. A few turn away, shoulders shaking quietly. Then, as always, there's the other kind of envelope, the small, buff one that no one wants. The corporal handles those differently, voice lowering. He calls 2 names, pauses after each. No one looks directly. The men step forward, take the telegrams, and disappear down the trench. Silence follows them like fog. Langley folds his letter and tucks it into his breast pocket. I'd rather get nothing than one of those, he murmurs. You nod. No news is better than bad. You unfold your paper again, rereading a line about your dog. He still sleeps by the door at night waiting for you. You feel a lump in your throat you didn't order. You blink it away. There's something both cruel and comforting about home carrying on without you. Now for the quirky fact. Because censors read every outgoing letter, soldiers invented code phrases to slip real information past the scissors. The mud is worse than last week might mean we've lost ground. The sergeants in fine spirits could signal expect casualties. Some even use subtle ink smudges or the pattern of a fold to send secret messages. You and Langley once tried to encode send tobacco by drawing a small pipe at the bottom of a letter. It came back with the doodle neatly cut out. The sergeant passes, pretending not to see the men smiling like children. He's got his own letter tucked into his tunic, you notice. Even stone has a crack somewhere. By mid-morning, the trench feels lighter. Someone starts singing softly, an old pub song about missing trains and sweethearts. Others join in, voices weaving through the fog. You add yours quietly, more breath than sound. For a few minutes, the war narrows to melody and ink. Then comes the inevitable open debate. Were these letters windows or wounds? Some historians argue they preserved sanity, tethering men to humanity. Others say they made the distance unbearable, reminding soldiers of what they'd lost. You think it depends on the day. Today, the paper in your hand feels like armour. Tomorrow, it might feel like a knife. A few of the lads compare notes about packages. Someone's received a tin of fruit, another a bar of soap. You all crowd around like children at fair. The soap passes from hand to hand, each man taking a sniff before giving it back. Clean air, condensed into one precious bar. Jones, who hasn't received a letter in months, shrugs off the envy. My girl's probably married a postman, he jokes. Everyone laughs, grateful for the release. Even loneliness gets its turn at humour. You fold your letter carefully, slide it back into the envelope and tuck it inside your coat. It sits over your heart, warm from your body. It's ridiculous how much comfort paper can hold. The corporal shouts, "All right lads, back to work." But the order carries no weight. Everyone moves slower, softer, like they've just come from church. Langley elbows you. "You gonna write back tonight?" "Course," you say. "Gotta tell her the mud's a new shade of brown." "Make it sound exotic," he says. "She'll think you're in paradise." The laughter returns briefly before settling into the background hum of the day. The men scatter, some to sentry posts, others to the cookhouse, a few back to sleep. You stay where you are for a while, rereading the last line again and again. "Come home safe." You whisper it back like a prayer, even though you stopped believing in prayers months ago. The wind picks up, tugging at the letter's edges, carrying a faint scent of smoke from someone's cooking fire. It almost smells like home for a second. You close your eyes, press the letter against your lips, and breathe. The paper tastes like salt and dirt and hope. Then you stand, fold it one last time, and move to join the others patching sandbags. The war won't wait for sentiment, but for a little while, you've remembered what it means to be alive. Evening drills always have a way of snapping the fragile spell that mail brings. No sooner have you tucked the letter away than the whistle shrieks again, and the sergeant's voice cuts through the trench. Over-the-top practice. Move like you mean it. You groan inwardly. The phrase alone tastes like dread. Over the top. The 3 words that turn the trench from misery into madness. It isn't a real assault tonight, just rehearsal, but everyone still feels their stomach tighten. Practice or not, this is the dance that kills. The men line up along the fire step, boots squelching, rifles ready. You can see the silhouette of the parapet ahead, crowned with jagged wire that gleams faintly in the dim light. Beyond that lies the impossible distance, no man's land. Even in rehearsal, it feels like standing at the edge of the world. The sergeant paces behind you, shouting the sequence like a ritual. Step up. Fix bayonets. Wait for the whistle. The metallic clicks echo down the line, a mechanical chorus. You attach your bayonet. Feel the cold weight of it shift the balance of your rifle. The blade catches what little light there is, flashing once like a warning. A historical fact. Every battalion practiced this drill relentlessly. Timing meant survival. 1 second too early over the parapet, a machine gun fire would scythe the line. 1 second too late, and you'd jam the advance behind you. Training was meant to make movement automatic, to erase hesitation. The army discovered, though, that you can't train fear out of muscle. Langley stands beside you, jaw tight. "Every time they do this," he mutters, "I swear it feels like the real thing." You nod. That's the point. The whistle blows once, you step up, boots sliding on the slick planks, and brace 1 foot on the fire step. The trench lip looms before you, just high enough to hide the world. Another blast, and you climb. Your heart hammers, though you know this is only rehearsal. The air on the parapet is sharp, colder than below, and for a dizzy second you imagine it's the smell of clean fields beyond. Then you remember where you are. The sergeant barks, "Advance!" You move forward 3 steps, bayonet levelled, boots sinking into the churned mud. The wire glints ahead, snarled, twisted, alive in the wind. You raise your knees high, wading through the imaginary barrage. Men stumble, curse, laugh nervously. Someone trips and falls face first into the sludge, drawing a round of half-hearted cheers. You drop back into the trench at the next signal, breath ragged. "Beautiful ballet," Langley says, wiping mud from his cheek. "We'll win medals for choreography." You manage a grin, though your hands are still shaking. Here's the quirky fact tucked into the mud. Officers sometimes used footballs during real assaults to keep men moving. In 1916, during the Somme, Captain Neville's company kicked footballs across no man's land as they advanced, shouting like schoolboys. It lasted about 30 seconds before the first shell landed. Courage, madness, or both. You've never decided. The sergeant orders another round. Again! This time with pace. Groans ripple down the line, but everyone obeys. You go through the motions, step, climb, advance, drop. Each repetition blurs fear into exhaustion until the act feels almost mundane. Maybe that's the trick. If you rehearse dying often enough, it starts to look like a job. When the drill finally ends, the men collapse onto sandbags, panting. Someone jokes that they should install turnstiles on the parapet for efficiency. Another mutters, "If we keep practicing, Jerry'll die of boredom." The laughter that follows is thin but sincere. You strip the bayonet from your rifle, wipe it clean on your sleeve. The blade gleams dully. You stare at your reflection, warped, ghost-like. You've grown so used to seeing yourself in metal that mirrors feel unnecessary now. The sergeant calls a brief rest. Langley lights 2 cigarettes, passes one over. You take it with a nod, inhale, and let the smoke fill the silence. The sky above is darkening, the faint orange of sunset seeping through smoke. "Think we'll ever do it for real?" Langley asks quietly. You shrug. Every rumour says soon. Every rumour says soon about everything. "Yeah," you reply, and they're always right eventually. The open debate for scholars a century later is whether the over-the-top drills helped or harmed morale. Some veterans later said they hardened the nerves, gave purpose to waiting. Others admitted that each rehearsal was a reminder of the slaughter to come, a preview of death rehearsed in daylight. You fall somewhere in between. The drills keep your body ready and your mind trembling. As dusk deepens, the trench lights flicker on. You run your hand along the rough wood of the fire step, feeling the grooves worn by 1,000 boots. Every inch of this place carries the memory of someone who climbed before you. Langley exhales smoke. "Funny thing," he says. "Every time I go up there, I think I'll never come back down. And yet here you are." "Yeah," he answers softly. "Here I am." The sergeant walks past, muttering to himself about schedules and supplies. Behind him, someone starts humming, low, steady, almost tuneless. You recognize it after a moment. "Keep the home fires burning." The melody drifts upward, thin but persistent, like a flare that refuses to die. You join in under your breath. It feels right. A small rebellion against the cold mechanics of training. The song fades as the lamps dim, replaced by the quiet drip of rain beginning again. You lie back against the wall, boots in the muck, eyes half closed. The echo of the whistle still rings in your ears, but your heartbeat finally slows. For now, the drill is over. The real thing waits somewhere ahead in time, patient as death itself. You reach into your pocket, touch the folded letter there and whisper, "Not yet." The rain starts up again not long after dusk, soft at first, then steady. A slow, soaking rhythm that turns every sound into a hush. The trench takes on its night colour, black on black, the faint shimmer of puddles and the occasional spark from a match. You draw your coat close and stand your turn on watch, the one job that never changes no matter what day, what season, what war it happens to be. Your post is a narrow bay just below the parapet. You rest your rifle on the firing step, eyes fixed on the strip of no man's land beyond the wire. It's invisible under the fog, but you know it's shaped by memory. The sagging fences, the craters full of water, the faint pale patch where a shell went off yesterday. Every few seconds you scan left to right, then back again. Nothing moves except the rain. Langley's in the bay next to you, silent except for the soft click of his lighter. He gets one spark, two, finally a flame. It flares for a heartbeat and paints his face gold. "You ever think Jerry's watching us right now?" he murmurs. "Always," you answer. "Probably laughing at our cigarettes." He grins in the dark. Maybe he's lighting one too. A historical fact floats naturally into the night. Snipers worked by sound more than sight. A single cough or match flare could end a life. Both sides learned to smoke with their backs to the wall, heads lowered, hands cupped. Some men put a tin lid in front of their faces to block the glow. Others just quit smoking at night altogether, if they had that kind of willpower. You lean forward, careful not to silhouette yourself against the dim light from the trench behind you. The rain has a pattern you've grown to trust. It covers smaller noises. Tonight, it's almost heavy enough to feel safe. Almost. Somewhere out there, a flare goes up. The night blooms white, harsh as noon, and everything freezes. The wire, the craters, even the raindrops seem to hang in the air. You hold your breath. The flare hisses down again, the darkness slams shut, and life resumes. Langley exhales. I'll never get used to that. No one does. You shift your weight, knees stiff from standing. The cold creeps through your boots, up your legs, until it feels like part of your bones. You think of beds, of sheets, of the sound of rain on windows instead of helmets. You can't remember if you ever liked rain before the war. A rat scuttles over your boot. You don't bother moving. It's too wet to care. To stay awake, you start counting seconds between distant artillery rumbles. 1, 2, 3, boom. The horizon flashes faintly orange far to the south. Probably another battery testing its aim. The war never truly sleeps. It just moves in waves. The quirky fact of the hour, in quiet sectors, both sides developed an unspoken rhythm, a sort of deadly etiquette. If one trench kept quiet, the other often returned the favour. Small truces formed, unofficial and fragile. Some nights there'd be no gunfire at all, just the creak of mud and the whisper of rain. Soldiers called it the listening war. You're living it right now. A voice behind you breaks the stillness. Jones whispers from the next bay down, "Heard they've got a sniper near the oak stump again." You glance toward the faint shape out there, half swallowed by mist. "Probably just a rumour." "Everything's a rumour till someone's dead," he says. You don't answer. You keep your rifle steady, eyes sweeping the horizon. The drizzle thickens into real rain, each drop cold enough to sting. Your fingers start to ache, and you flex them, trying to keep circulation. The smell of wet canvas and mud is overwhelming. Your whole world reduced to 2 feet of trench, and an infinite stretch of blackness beyond it. And here's tonight's open scholarly debate. Historians still argue about fear in the trenches. Was it constant or rhythmic? Letters describe moments like this. Hours of eerie calm where men convinced themselves they weren't afraid, only to collapse when a shell finally came. You feel it yourself now. The calm is worse than the noise. The silence sharpens your senses until you imagine threats in every raindrop. A faint sound pricks your ear. Metal? You freeze. Langley hears it too. His hand tightens on his rifle. The two of you stare into the dark. Nothing moves. You whisper, "Could be wire sagging." He nods, but doesn't relax. The rain hammers down, masking smaller noises, and soon you can't tell if it was real or your mind making ghosts again. You force yourself to breathe slowly. The trick is rhythm. Match your breath to the rain, to the tiny movements of the trench. In, out. Count to 10. The minutes slide by. Eventually the sound fades into nothing. Or maybe it never existed. Time dilates on watch. You stop thinking in minutes, start thinking in heartbeats. You picture the German line doing the same. Men like you standing in mirror trenches, just as soaked, just as tired, probably humming the same songs under their breath. You almost wish you could call across the darkness, just to confirm they're still human. The corporal comes by for the half-hour relief. "All quiet," he whispers. "Too quiet," Langley mutters. The corporal nods, adjusts his helmet, moves on. His boots splash softly in the puddles. You keep watching until the relief pair arrives to take over. When they climb into the bay, you feel a strange reluctance to leave. The fear has cooled into focus. Letting go feels unsafe. Langley nudges you. "Come on, hero." T's waiting. You step down from the firing step, legs shaking from the cold, and hand your rifle to the next sentry. Your hands are stiff, the metal slick with moisture. You rub them together, trying to bring feeling back. As you move down the trench toward the brazier's glow, the smell of weak tea and burnt bread greets you like perfume. You wrap your hands around the steaming tin cup Langley passes over. The heat bites your palms, Behind you, the rain keeps falling. Somewhere out there, another flare hisses up, turns the world white, then fades. The darkness returns, thick and endless, and you whisper to it without meaning to, "Stay that way." Langley hears but says nothing. The two of you sip your tea, heads bowed, shoulders touching for warmth. The war hums on, unseen but never gone. Morning doesn't come with light anymore. It just sneaks up, turning the black sky into something the colour of dirty dishwater. You wake to the usual chorus of coughs, curses and boots, sucking free from mud. The night sentries are crawling back in, eyes half closed, faces pale. Someone's trying to start a fire under the cook shelter, coaxing flame from rain-soaked twigs. The smell of smoke and damp uniforms is weirdly comforting. You rub your eyes and stretch until your back pops. The trench is quieter than normal, though you can feel the tension humming under it, the silence before another day's grind. Langley is already awake, sitting cross-legged on a crate, scratching his neck furiously. "Lice again, you ask?" He groans. "I think they're breeding for winter." You pull off your tunic and start the morning's routine hunt. It's disgusting work, but strangely satisfying, like revenge. You pinch one between your thumbnails, hear the tiny snap, and sigh. Got one. Langley holds up a matchstick, examining a louse he's caught crawling along his sleeve. Think this one has seniority. He tosses it into the candle flame. Promotion denied. A historical fact creeps in with the scratching. Body lice were universal. Soldiers called them chats, or greybacks, and they thrived in seams of uniforms and blankets. They carried trench fever, a flu-like sickness that could lay a man out for weeks. The army tried everything. Powders, baths, boiling clothes. Nothing worked for long. Some men swore the lice had ranks of their own, veterans that returned no matter how many you killed. Jones strolls past, shirtless, scratching furiously. "I've named mine," he says. "This one's the colonel, the rest are staff officers." Everyone laughs, because you have to. Humour's the only pesticide that sticks. Once the morning's massacre is over, you rub a bit of candle wax along your collar to stop the itching. It doesn't help. Nothing does. Langley shakes out his blanket, and a small flurry of dead lice hits the mud. "If we ever get home," he says, "I'm burning everything I own." "You and half of Europe," you answer. Breakfast arrives in its usual anticlimax. A pot of thin soup and hard bread. Someone's managed to scavenge a tin of jam from a parcel, and a single spoonful gets stirred into the pot like treasure. The mixture tastes faintly of fruit and overwhelmingly of salt, but no one complains. Langley dips his bread, chews thoughtfully and says, "You realise these are our good days? Sitting around murdering lice and pretending this is food?" You nod. "When the shells start again, we'll miss the lice." A quirky fact slides in as you eat. Some soldiers actually adopted lice as pets. They'd keep one in a matchbox, betting on whose would crawl out first. A private in the Lancashire Fusiliers even carved tiny names onto his matchboxes, General Chat and Admiral Itch. The absurdity of it makes sense to you now. If everything's ridiculous, you might as well participate. The sergeant strolls by, eyeing the men. "Inspection in 10 minutes, he barks, "and I don't care how much you itch, you'll stand still for it." He moves off, muttering about discipline while everyone groans. You line up along the trench wall, trying not to scratch while the officer passes. He pretends not to notice the lice, though his nose wrinkles at the smell. He says the usual things. Keep rifles clean, morale high, boots greased. You bite back the urge to ask which of those he thinks is possible. After inspection, the day settles into the long lull before noon. You sit with Langley and Jones near the brazier, sharing a cigarette and swapping stories that might be true. Langley tells one about a man who caught a louse, tied a bit of string to it, and raced it against his mates. You counter with a story about an officer who claimed his lice spelled out his initials on his back. Jones tops both with a tale of a French soldier who trained his lice to march in formation. The trench erupts in laughter. Jones grins. "Don't look at me like that." You'd believe anything at this point, and you would. The open scholarly debate for the historians comes easy here. Was the filth part of what broke men, or part of what bonded them? Letters from the front are divided. Some men describe the lice and mud with disgust so raw it borders on despair. Others talk about it like weather, just another thing to live with. Maybe endurance itself became a kind of fellowship. You scratch your shoulder and think that if shared misery is glue, this trench will never fall apart. The rain keeps up a steady drizzle. The brazier smoke hangs low, thick and blue, making your eyes sting. Somewhere behind you, someone is trying to tune a violin, just 4 strings and a cracked body, but the sound floats up pure and sad. The melody wraps around the hum of rain, and for a minute everyone stops talking. Langley murmurs, "Almost sounds like music from home." "Almost," you say, and you feel something tighten in your chest. You look down at your hands, filthy and cracked, at your sleeves crawling again despite the morning's hunt. You wonder what it would be like to wear clean clothes, to sleep without scratching yourself bloody. The thought feels obscene, luxurious. Then you shake it off. The violin plays on. You lean back against the trench wall, close your eyes, and let the sound drown out the scratching. The rain patters, the mud squelches, the lice regroup. Langley chuckles softly beside you. Another glorious day in paradise. You open one eye and grin. "And tomorrow we do it all again." He nods, mock solemn. Wouldn't miss it for the world. The joke lands softly. You both smile at the absurdity, at the tiny stubborn spark of laughter that refuses to die here. Somewhere deep in the mud, something else is alive too. The faint pulse of survival, beating in time with the violin and the rain. Afternoon drifts lazily toward evening, the sky bruised purple at the edges. You're halfway through trying to patch a rip in your coat when the call comes down the line. "Padre's here!" The words stir a small ripple of activity. Some men groan, others straighten their tunics and smooth their hair like schoolboys caught napping. A few pretend not to hear. You close your sewing kit and glance at Langley, who's rolling his eyes. "Another sermon," he mutters. "Probably," you reply, "but at least it's not digging." The chaplain appears soon after, ducking under the sandbag arch with a calmness that feels entirely alien to the trench. He's wearing the same mud-streaked greatcoat as everyone else, but somehow it looks cleaner on him. His boots squelch just like yours, yet he manages to make it look dignified. "Good afternoon, lads," he says softly, voice low but clear. "Mind if I borrow you for a few minutes?" No one refuses. There's an unspoken rule. When the chaplain shows up, you let him speak. He carries no rifle, no orders, just a kind of gentle gravity that makes the war pause for a breath. You gather around the brazier, maybe 15 men in all, steam rising from your coats like ghosts escaping. The padre stands by the crate that serves as a pulpit, holding a small Bible so worn the edges have curled. "Won't keep you long," he begins. "Just thought we might talk about peace. Not the big kind, just the kind you can find for 5 minutes in a place like this." Langley leans over and whispers, 5 minutes? He's an optimist. You elbow him lightly but grin. The padre smiles faintly as if he heard. He talks about home, about how even the worst storms end eventually, about light finding cracks in the darkest places. You half listen, half watch the smoke twisting up into the grey sky. His words float over you, comforting but strange, like a lullaby in a language you used to know. A historical fact. Chaplains were fixtures in nearly every frontline unit. They held services in dugouts, gave last rites under shell fire, wrote letters home for the dying. Some even went over the top alongside the men. They weren't there to preach victory. They were there to remind soldiers that they were still human. In surveys after the war, more than half of surviving infantrymen listed the padre as the one man they trusted unconditionally. The padre finishes his short reading, closes the Bible, and looks at you all with a kind of quiet ache. "You've seen hell," he says simply, "but even here there are small mercies. A letter, a song, the man next to you." Jones mutters, "And rum." A wave of laughter rolls through the group. The padre smiles. "Yes, even rum. God's mysterious in his methods." He gestures to the brazier. "Let's pray if you're willing." A few men remove helmets. A few stare at the ground. You bow your head but don't close your eyes. Instead, you watch the flames flicker against the mud wall, painting everything in shades of gold. The padre's voice murmurs over the crackle, words about courage, endurance, memory. You let the sound wash over you. When he finishes, the men linger longer than expected. Someone asks if he's heard news from headquarters, another asks about home churches, another just thanks him quietly. Langley shakes his head. "Every time he comes, I feel both better and worse." You nod. That's probably his job. The quirky fact to tuck here. Some chaplains carried harmonicas or small organs to lead hymns. Others improvised. One famously used empty shell casings as candle holders and a wooden crate as an altar. The soldiers nicknamed him Holy Moses in Boots. You like that? It fits the vibe. Faith built out of fragments. The padre begins packing his Bible into a satchel, ready to move down the line. "If any of you need to talk," he says, "I'll be around till evening." He means it, and you know some will take him up on it. Quiet chats about fear, about death, about things that don't fit into the jokes. After he leaves, the trench feels subtly lighter, though no one admits it. The men disperse slowly, as if reluctant to break the spell. Langley tosses a pebble into a puddle. "You believe any of that?" You think for a long moment before answering. "I believe in small mercies." He nods, staring at the ground. "Yeah, small's about all we get." The open scholarly debate that historians still circle around. How much did faith really matter here? Some accounts tell of men clinging fiercely to prayer, others of total disbelief. Many floated somewhere in between, a quiet, private form of spirituality, built not on dogma but on the thin hope that something out there might still care. You suspect that's where you fall. You don't need heaven, just a little mercy. Later, as dusk settles, the padre returns briefly, carrying a tin kettle. "Tea for the soul," he jokes, pouring a bit into each man's cup. It's lukewarm, vaguely metallic, but the gesture warms more than the liquid. Before he leaves for good, he glances back and says, "When this is over, lads, remember each other. You're the only ones who'll really understand." Then he disappears into the mist, the faint outline of his coat merging with the fog until he's gone. For a while, no one speaks. The rain starts again, gentle this time. You look toward where he vanished and feel something stir, a flicker of gratitude maybe, or something quieter. Langley breaks the silence. He should bless the lice next time. They're the only ones thriving. You laugh, the sound surprising even you. That's probably why he doesn't. You sip your tea, let it chase the chill from your throat, and lean back against the wall. Somewhere above, the clouds shift, revealing a thin streak of light that might almost pass for a sunset. For a heartbeat, the trench glows. You close your eyes, and for 5 merciful minutes you almost believe. You don't hear the first shell. No one ever really does. It starts as a low hum, too deep to be sound, more a vibration in the chest than in the air. Then the ground seems to inhale, just for a second, and exhale in thunder. The blast hits before you can think. The trench shudders like a living thing. Earth rains down in clumps. Stones ping off helmets. Someone screams. "Down!" the sergeant bellows, though everyone's already flat in the muck. Another shell lands close enough to shake the duckboards loose. Mud and smoke pour into the trench like a tide. You press your face into the earth and taste metal. The bombardment has begun. The sky erupts in pulses of orange. Each detonation lights the trench for an instant before throwing it back into blackness. You can't see more than a few feet, but you can feel everything. The shockwave punching through your ribs, the grit in your teeth, the hiss of something on fire. Langley's next to you, shouting something you can't hear. His mouth moves, his hand grips your arm. You nod just to show you're alive. A historical fact hits hard here. Shellfire was the greatest killer of the First World War, responsible for roughly 60% of casualties. Men feared it more than bullets because you couldn't predict it, couldn't fight back. You just endured and prayed that statistics favoured your spot in the mud. The air tastes like burning iron. The smell, cordite, wet soil, something else you don't name, fills every breath. You hear the whine of another incoming round. You know that sound too well. It starts high, drops low, and ends with judgment. "Brace!" Langley shouts. The explosion throws a shower of mud over the parapet. You feel it slam into your back like wet gravel. Someone cries out. Someone else is praying. You keep your face pressed to the ground, counting heartbeats. You've learned to measure fear in numbers. 5 blasts, 10, 15. The barrage doesn't stop. It rolls up and down the line like thunder chained to the earth. The trench groans under the weight of its own collapse. You feel the wall behind you crumble slightly, sand trickling into your collar. Jones scrambles past, crawling low, helmet askew. "They're walking the barrage," he yells. You barely catch it, but you know what it means. The shells are moving forward, sweeping the ground before an advance. You grab your rifle out of instinct, even though firing now would be pointless. The sergeant's voice rips through the chaos. "Hold the line! Stay down!" A near miss hits close enough to suck all the air from your lungs. You open your mouth and nothing comes out. Ears ringing, you taste mud and copper. The world dissolves into a single long note of sound, higher than hearing, lower than pain. When it finally fades, you realise you're still alive. You laugh once, sharp, breathless, absurd. Langley looks at you, grinning through mud. "Still here!" he shouts. You nod, half hysterical. "Still ugly!" The laughter bubbles up, ridiculous against the roar. Maybe that's what keeps you human, finding humour in the cracks between explosions. A quirky fact slips through the smoke. Soldiers developed a grim slang for shells. Jack Johnsons for the big black German ones, whiz-bangs for the smaller high-speed rounds, crumps for the dull, heavy detonations. They named them like pets or weather patterns, personalising the impersonal. It was a coping mechanism, giving chaos a nickname so it felt smaller. The barrage finally slows, the silence almost painful after so much noise. Smoke hangs low, thick as fog. You lift your head, ears ringing like broken bells. All along the trench, men are moving, checking, calling names, pulling comrades out from under collapsed sections. You help Langley clear a half-buried private, his face grey with shock but alive. You both drag him to the side, prop him against a wall that's barely holding. "You all right?" you ask. He nods too fast. You don't press it. A few yards away, the sergeant counts under his breath. "Two missing," he says quietly, almost to himself. "Could be down the far bay." He doesn't shout their names. No one does until the firing's truly done. The open scholarly debate historians wrestle with is whether soldiers ever got used to bombardment. Diaries say both. Some men went numb, others broke instantly. The psychologists later called it shell shock. You just call it survival in slow motion. Every blast rewires you a little, until the silence afterward feels wrong, like missing a heartbeat. Langley slaps your shoulder. "Ears still work?" "Mostly." "Good. I need someone to complain to." You grin weakly. "Go on then." He opens his mouth, but before he can speak, another distant thud rolls across the horizon. Everyone freezes. It's far off, maybe miles away, but every head turns in the same direction. Once bitten, forever listening. When nothing follows, shoulders drop collectively. The sergeant orders men to start repairs. Shovels scrape, boots squelch, someone coughs up mud. Life resumes its strange imitation of normal. You find your tin cup half buried near your feet, dented but intact. You wipe it clean with your sleeve and pour in a bit of lukewarm tea from Langley's flask. The liquid trembles slightly from aftershocks in your hands. "Cheers," he says, raising his cup. "To what?" you ask. "To the law of averages," he says, grinning. "It's got to miss us forever eventually." You clink the cups, take a sip, and cough at the taste. Smoke and metal and something like burnt sugar. It doesn't matter. It's liquid. It's warm. It's real. The rain begins again, steady and indifferent, tamping down the smoke. Somewhere far down the line, a man starts humming the same song from last night, off-key but determined. The sound winds through the mist, soft as memory. You rest your head against the trench wall, eyes closed. Your body still hums with the echo of explosions. The ground breathes beneath you. You think of the Padre's words, small mercies, and decide that breathing for now counts. When the shelling finally moves off, the trench feels like it's holding its breath. For a few long minutes nobody speaks, then slowly sound returns. Boots scraping, someone coughing, the groan of a shovel prying at collapsed mud. The air is thick with dust and smoke glowing faintly orange from fires still burning at the far end of the line. The sergeant's voice is hoarse but steady. "Check for wounded! Move! You don't need the order! You're already climbing over a half-fallen section of wall, scanning the shadows for movement. Langley's right behind you, face streaked with soot. Over here," he calls, kneeling beside a figure half buried in clay. You grab a shovel and start digging with your hands, fingers sinking into cold, wet earth. It feels alive, like the ground itself is breathing with you. The man you uncover is young, too young. His helmet's gone, his hair plastered to his forehead with mud. He's breathing, shallow but there. You and Langley hook your arms under his shoulders, hauling him upright. He moans softly but doesn't wake. "Get him to the dressing station," the sergeant orders. You start moving. The duckboards are slick with mud and blood. Every step is a battle against slipping, but you move carefully, steadily, keeping the wounded man upright. His weight feels impossible at first, but then you stop noticing. The mind learns quickly what it refuses to feel. A historical fact. During the First World War, stretcher bearers and trench medics were among the bravest men in uniform. They went out under fire to pull the wounded from no man's land, often without weapons, guided only by moans in the dark. Casualty clearing stations sat miles behind the front, but the first line of care was always here. Makeshift, filthy, and usually miraculous. You reach a small dugout reinforced with wood and sandbags. The aid post, a corporal in rolled-up sleeves, gestures you in. Inside, the air is thicker still, heavy with iodine, sweat, and the copper tang of blood. 2 lanterns flicker weakly, their light trembling across faces pale and still. You lay the man on a blanket-covered plank. The medic nods. Good work. He'll live. Langley sinks down beside the doorway, breathing hard. You join him. The inside of your mouth tastes like dirt and adrenaline. The medic works in silence, his hands moving with grim precision. You look around. 1 man missing a boot, another clutching his arm, a third staring blankly at the ceiling while a private holds his hand. There's no shouting here, just that strange, subdued quiet that comes after chaos. Langley whispers, "They never show this bit in the posters." You nod, too tired for words. A quirky fact. The British Army distributed morphine syrettes, small brass tubes with a needle, to medics at the front. They were meant to dull pain quickly. Soldiers joked that they were tickets to dreamland. Sometimes when supplies ran out, they used rum instead. A few men even carried empty syrettes as good luck charms, proof that they'd cheated the worst once already. You stand, muscles trembling, and step outside for air. The rain has washed most of the smoke away, leaving a strange, eerie calm. No shells, no gunfire, just the slow drip of water from the parapet. The trench smells like a wet forge, mud, cordite, and the faint sweetness of burnt wood. Langley joins you, wiping his hands on his coat. "Remember when we thought mud was the worst part?" he asks. "Yeah," you say quietly. "I almost miss being wrong." You both laugh, though it comes out ragged. Further down, a group of men are patching the trench wall with sandbags, working by lantern light. Others stand guard, rifles ready, though it's clear no attack is coming tonight. The Germans are probably repairing their own damage, their own dead. You find yourself wondering if their trenches smell the same, if their wounded groan in the same rhythms. You suspect they do. The open scholarly debate here. Historians still argue about whether compassion for the enemy existed in the trenches, or was just a later myth. Diaries reveal both extremes, hatred and pity, rage and empathy often tangled in the same paragraph. You've never fired at a man you could see clearly, and you wonder what would happen if you did. Maybe he'd just look like you, mud-covered and terrified. The sergeant calls for volunteers to fetch more wounded from the forward bay. You don't hesitate. You grab a stretcher with Langley and head toward the collapsed section where the last shells hit. The ground squelches underfoot and every shadow looks alive. You find another body, this one still conscious, groaning softly. He's pinned under a broken beam. Together you lift, grunt, heave it aside. He's bleeding from his leg, the kind of wound that's messy but survivable. "Easy, mate," Langley says. "We've got you." You lay him on the stretcher and start the slow trek back. The rain's heavier now, drumming against your helmets, turning every board into a trap. Halfway there, he grips your wrist. "Don't let them forget me," he whispers. You meet his eyes and say, "They won't." You're lying, but it's a good lie. Back at the aid post, you hand him off to the medic and step outside again, chest heaving. The trench feels quieter than ever, like the earth itself is tired. The fires are dying down, the sky above glowing faintly red from distant flashes. Langley sits on a sandbag, rubbing his temples. "You think that lad'll make it?" he asks. You shrug. Doesn't matter if he does. He'll still smell like this place forever. He nods, eyes dark. We all will. You look out across no man's land, silent, smoking, endless. The ground glistens where the flares have burned out, puddles reflecting faint stars. For a fleeting second you imagine the world healed. The grass regrown, the mud forgotten, the men gone home. It's such a vivid picture that it hurts. You shake your head, push the image away and sit down beside Langley. This silence between you is heavy but not hopeless. You light a cigarette, pass it to him, and watch the tiny ember flare against the dark. "Here's to the wounded," he says softly. "And to whoever carries them," you reply. The two of you sit there a while longer, smoke curling into the damp air, the faint sound of shovels still working behind you. The night presses close, but not cruelly. For now, the guns are silent. You know it won't last, but silence, even borrowed, feels like grace. By the next morning, the mud has already swallowed the evidence of the night before. Shell holes are filled with rainwater, the trench wall patched into rough shape again. The only traces left are the fresh sandbags and the new silence among the men, one of those silences that isn't emptiness but weight. Everyone moves slower, quieter, as though the ground might remember names you'd rather forget. Breakfast is cold bread and a rumour that replacements are coming soon. No one believes it, but it gives you something to chew on besides the biscuits. You and Langley eat sitting on the parapet's edge, legs dangling into the muck, the sky overhead a tired white. "Suppose they actually send new lads," Langley says. "What'll we tell them?" You shrug. "Don't volunteer, don't dig too deep, and don't name the rats." He laughs. "Good advice. Leave out the part about not breathing during shelling. Let them figure that one out." A few yards down, Jones is reading from a scrap of newspaper. "Says here they're making great progress near Ypres," he calls out, voice dripping sarcasm. "The paper says we're practically on holiday." "Tell the Kaiser we'll save him a deck chair," someone answers. Laughter follows, short and sharp, like sparks from damp wood. The humour doesn't last long. It never does. The day stretches thin, the air too still, the waiting worse than noise. You can hear the distant rumble of guns far to the south, a storm moving along another line, but here, nothing. Only the constant drip of water, the scrape of a shovel, the sigh of a man remembering he's still here. A historical fact that fits this hollow morning. Trench life ran on rumour as much as rations. News trickled down days late, distorted and half-true. Soldiers depended on gossip, songs and letters to stitch together a sense of the wider war. Many didn't even know which village or ridge they were fighting for at any given time. You've lost count yourself. This stretch of mud could be anywhere. Langley lights a cigarette and squints toward no man's land. The fog has burned off, revealing the barren field between you and the German line, a place that looks like it was carved out of nightmares. "Hard to believe we used to walk on ground like that without worrying," he says quietly. "Just fields and fences. Grass, you add. Birds. Trees that weren't splinters." He nods, exhaling smoke. Feels like another planet now. Somewhere down the line, a runner brings word from HQ. Nothing major, just an update. A new lieutenant's arrived. Another rotation scheduled for the next week. Maybe even a day's rest at a rear billet. The men perk up slightly as though the word rest might actually mean something here. Jones mutters, "If rest means less mud, I'll take it." Langley smirks. "You'd complain if it were champagne and pillows." "I'd complain it wasn't enough champagne," Jones fires back. The laughter this time is softer, gentler. You notice how the sound sits strangely against the background quiet, like birds calling after a storm. Then the conversation drifts to rumours of peace, the kind that surface every few weeks when hope gets bored. Someone says the Germans are running out of shells. Another claims the Americans are sending 1 million men. You've learned not to believe anything, but you don't stop them. Sometimes lies are the only thing keeping truth from suffocating you. A quirky fact. One of the most persistent myths among frontline soldiers was that both sides' generals secretly corresponded, agreeing on which days to fight and which to rest. Men swore they could predict when the Germans would shell based on the timing of British meals. "They let us eat breakfast," you remember one corporal saying, "and we let them eat dinner." The logic was absurd but comforting. You lean back, feeling the wall press cold through your coat. Your hands are cracked, nails black with dirt that never washes off. The smell of wet canvas and old smoke clings to you so fully that you doubt you'll ever smell of anything else again. The open scholarly debate historians still chew on is whether men here were truly resigned or simply numb. Letters from the front are full of paradox, hope and despair written in the same paragraph. One man writes, "We expect death but plan for next Christmas." You understand that line now. You've stopped fearing the end. You just hope you'll have enough socks when it comes. Langley finishes his cigarette, stubs it out on the duckboard and says, "You ever think what we'll do when this ends?" "Sleep," you say automatically. He shakes his head. "No, I mean after that. Properly ends. You think we'll just go home and forget. You think about your sister's letters, about how she keeps writing as if you're already half returned. You think about bread and quiet rooms, about the sound of rain without fear attached. Maybe we'll try, you say finally, but the war's got long arms. It'll follow us home. Langley doesn't answer right away. Then he nods. Maybe. But at least home's uphill from here. You both laugh because gallows humour is cheaper than truth. A whistle blows somewhere down the trench. Mail call again, though this time there's nothing for you. You're not disappointed. The absence is its own kind of peace. You light another cigarette instead, watch the smoke drift upward, blending with the mist. The men settle into the slow rhythm of the afternoon. Someone plays a harmonica, the melody wobbly but sincere. Jones dozes sitting up, head against a sandbag. Langley's whittling something from a piece of wood, probably another pipe he'll never finish. The sun almost breaks through the clouds, a weak circle of light smearing across the sky. For the first time in days you can see shadows again, long, uncertain things stretching across the trench walls. You watch yours for a while, remembering what it felt like to walk in daylight without crouching. You take out your notebook and write a single line, still alive, still waiting. Then you close it, tuck it back into your coat, and look toward no man's land again. The fog is creeping back already, erasing everything. You whisper, almost without meaning to, "Stay quiet." Langley glances at you, then back at the horizon. "Aye," he says softly. "Quiet's the only friend we've got left." And so the day ends like most days here, unbroken, unfinished, and somehow still surviving its own emptiness.